starting now. Come on, come on.
Hi, and welcome to tonight's evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are, evening, a shining light on Beit Shemesh. I'm your moderator for the evening. My name is Freda Rosenfeld. I'm a longtime friend of Yad Sarah and a recent Ola to Israel. And very happy to introduce to you the amazing all-female group from Beit Shemesh and their wonderful work that they do. I feel very honored to be here tonight, and I feel sort of like that British expression where the sun never sets on the British Empire. We have people from all over, from LA to New York to Israel. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. The sun is shining bright on Yad Sarah friends as well. I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a teeny bit of housekeeping. We're going to save questions for the end because they may be answered during the process of the evening, but do send them in and we will try to answer them at the end. What I'd like to do is kick off the evening by introducing this exciting panel of women so you could get to know them a little bit more. First, I'd like to introduce to you our manager. Give a little wave, Rebecca Palma. She's been the branch manager at Beit Shemesh since 2000. She started working in 2000, and she is proud to say that when they started, they were using handwritten notes to keep track of their equipment, and she got them up and running on the computer system, which is an amazing thing. for those who are younger, it's hard to believe we worked without computers, but being on computers really is an amazing thing. So thank you. We also have Susan Fitch. Can you give a little wave so everyone can see who you are? Before her retirement, Susan was a chief technology and MRI for many years at Hadassah Hospital Medical Center. She also worked in nuclear medicine, and she uses her medical knowledge every shift and is proud to start her Sunday mornings by volunteering. That is a great way to start the week. Sharon, please wave your hand. Sharon Knesset. Sharon has been director of occupational therapy at Northern Metropolitan Monsey, New York for 30 years. After her retirement, she and her husband made Aliyah, and now she puts her professional experience to good use by volunteering at Yad Sarah. Janet Berman, give a good wave. Janet was a physical therapist for over 40 years and has taught physical therapy at many levels throughout. She has been volunteering at Yad Sarah for the last 8 years and uses her experience to give clients advice on her setups and in their houses and how to best use their equipment for themselves. Pam, I hope I'm getting this right, Swickley. Pam has been volunteering at Yad Sarah Beit Shemesh branch for over 5 years, as well as running her own private clinic in Beit Shemesh and working as an acupuncturist in the labor room at Hadassah Hospital. She thinks it's important to give back to the community. So do I. And working with Yad Sarah allows her to do that. I'm also in healthcare, by the way. I'm a board certified lactation consultant and nutritionist. So we have a lot of people who really care about your health online tonight. And it's a really an honor to be working with these other fantastic healthcare providers. So what I'd like to do is start by going around the room and asking people to tell us a little bit about what you do that makes your big day at Yad Sarah special. Why don't we start with Rebecca? Tell us some of the fun stuff you do and what really makes your day special.
Okay, well, as you said, I run the Beit Shemesh branch, so I don't have a fixed day or fixed hours at Yad Sarah. I'm generally available throughout the day to answer calls from the different volunteers who run the shifts. We're open more with a morning shift, an afternoon shift, and evening shift most days of the week. So I'm really do a lot more of the troubleshooting. When the volunteers get stuck or something more complicated comes in, some things I'm able to help them with on the spot via the phone, other things they leave on my desk. And now with WhatsApp, it's a lot easier. They can photograph the equipment, they can send me information by WhatsApp, and then I can deal with it later in the week. So that's mainly what I do. It's dealing with the volunteers, enrolling volunteers when new volunteers come in, giving them a run through of the branch and seeing what exactly, where they fit in. And as I said, the day-to-day running behind the scenes of the branch.
Okay, how many hours a week is the branch open?
Branch is now open. We've just recently, since the summer, opened 2 extra shifts. So we're open 6 mornings a week, 4 afternoons, and 3 evening night shifts, whatever. So that's 8, 11, no, what was it? 11, 13 it must be.
Okay, Pam, let's move to you for a moment. Tell us some of this fun stuff you do, what you consider your most special work at the Beit Shemesh branch.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So most of the time there are almost 2 categories of people. They're going to be like the fun, happy, someone's coming in for a breast pump or a crib, and those, we blow up balloons for them. It's a very sweet thing where congratulations. Sometimes we're busy. So actually the guy who works the inventory is there on Sunday mornings with us. He'll show the husbands how to use the breast pump so they could show their wife. It's very sweet. And then unfortunately on the other times, in the lesser cases, it's, a sprained foot, a broken foot. And then unfortunately more debilitating, we need air mattresses. My father can't walk anymore. So it runs the gamut. So the fun stuff is the congratulations, Mazel Tov, you had a baby. And then the harder stuff is when someone comes in, you could tell they're grappling. They have a whole list of things that they need to support an ailing family member or neighbor. There's a lot of generous, kind neighbors that come in that help each other. So that's pretty much the morning.
Okay, great. Susan, you want to share with us something special you do at the branch and any special story you'd like to share with us that might be particularly unique to Beit Shemesh?
So firstly, Pam and I volunteer on the same shift, so we share a lot of our stories together. But in the last, I would say 6 months or so, I approached Rebecca and told her that I love helping people, but I also like making sure that the equipment is available and in good working condition. So I've been helping out actually cleaning and fixing equipment in the last couple of months because I'm very technical and that's the kind of thing I like to do. So I also like that, and I like to be able like if someone comes in and there's not a piece of equipment that's been cleaned or checked or whatever, I like the fact that I can go and do that and get them something that wasn't available before that. Also, one of the questions you had asked us is what kind of people do you work with? That's the thing that's interesting in Yad Sarah is that Beit Shemesh is a very, 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 very community. There are all different kinds of populations, and you get to know people from different neighborhoods and different areas and different cultures. So that part's very interesting.
That is, it's very special because people don't realize that Israel is really, they think of us as all very the same, but we're really a very diverse and wonderful nation. And it's really special that Yad Sarah realizes this and does special things with it. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Sharon, is there anything special you'd like to share with us as we open up the
Well, the first thing is when I walk in the morning, I feel like I've made a new family. Being a new Ola, you don't know many people, but when I joined Yad Sarah, I really felt like I was walking into this huge, wonderful family that is giving and caring. So when I walk in the morning and I see my workmates, they, my day just starts off with a big smile. We ask how each of us are, our families, we get to know each other. And then just helping the people in the community, as everyone's saying, Beit Shemesh is so diverse. I love meeting what we call the Vatikim, the people who've lived in Beit Shemesh, for the last 60 years, 70 years, and then the new Olim who come in and are happy to hear me speaking English. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to help people that you ordinarily wouldn't have met. So it's a great feeling.
Okay, great. And Janet, I'm going to ask you to start with a slightly different thing. So we're still in the throes of COVID. You want to talk a little bit about how COVID's possibly changed how your site is working or how you've been able to help, or any special story that you might want to share with us?
Yes, I would share a story. At the beginning of COVID, a person called on the phone, and at some point I realized that she had COVID. She just had returned from the States and she was in isolation, and we immediately sent all the equipment to the house. We had a volunteer that did it, and she's been in touch with, well, that was a year and a half ago, and she's been in touch with me for many times. I had to deliver to the house, pick up equipment, and the son returned the equipment in my sukkah. And then she called, she wanted us, and she lost her husband, not because of COVID, but she lost her husband, and then she was totally alone. And I brought another piece of equipment to her, and then she wanted to set up, what's it called, an emergency button. And so I filled out the forms. They didn't speak Hebrew, and I filled out the forms, and then I got, then she she had something happened, and the alarm went off, and she called me again, and I've been in touch with her for many times, and it's amazing. It's just amazing.
Real personal connection. That's really
Yeah.
very special. Thank you. So, Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit as the manager how things shifted during COVID? Like, did you have to close, or because you were medical equipment, were you able to stay open during those early difficult weeks? And how has that changed how you manage the Beit Shemesh site?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to say that we did not close down one single shift during COVID. My volunteers were amazing, absolutely amazing. Of course, we were allowed, from the government point of view, we were allowed to be open. We were considered an essential, whatever you call it. We were essential anyway, essential workers. Some of the older volunteers didn't come in, at least during the first 3 or 4 months when we were all very neurotic and didn't really know what was going on. But we're fortunate in Beit Shemesh that we have many young volunteers, and people just still came in. A lot of even the not very young, but those people who, I have volunteers who work and normally do night shifts, but because people weren't working, they were happy to come in and fill in where I had gaps because the older volunteers weren't coming in. But after 3 or 4 months, we more or less were back to normal, and except for having to wear masks, of course, we're quite strict about people wearing masks. And of course, there was a big increase in the demand for oxygen, both oxygen tanks and the machines that create 24-hour, 24/7 oxygen, the electrical machines. So also,
did you ever run out of oxygen?
There were times when we were down to the bare minimum, but luckily for us in Beit Shemesh, the area manager, who also is in charge of the main, it's not storeroom, whatever you, oh my God, my English, Machsan, anyone?
Storage room. Machsan is a storage room.
Storeroom. Okay, the main stock room or storeroom in Jerusalem, he happens to live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. So when we were stuck for equipment, he would bring, I would call him and he would bring stuff in on the extra equipment on his way home. So besides being open 24/7, not being open all the time, we were also made sure that we were fully stocked. Even during those first 3 or 4 months where some branches were closed, they actually were very good. The central stockroom, to make sure that we did have enough equipment because they knew people were coming in from other areas as well.
Okay, so just to stay with you for just a moment longer, is that Beit Shemesh is truly a growing community. I mean, when I drive to my son in Karmei Gad, I see literally Beit Shemesh expanding south and south. So where exactly are you located, and is it easy for all the different Beit Shemesh residents to get to you? Are you like centrally located and so forth?
We're based in Old Beit Shemesh because that's where the original branch was 45 years ago, when there wasn't much more than Old Beit Shemesh. Most people in the outlying areas either have a car or they take public transport. We consciously chose to stay, or I consciously made that decision to stay in Old Beit Shemesh because those people in Old Beit Shemesh who need us are people who don't normally have forms of transport, and there's also a more elderly population in that area. People come in from the outlying areas. If they come from outside Beit Shemesh, they have a car. We do have another branch in Ramat Beit Shemesh in one of the newer neighborhoods that is in someone's home, the Deutsch family that are very generously given a room in their apartment, and people in that area can go to them for the basic equipment. They don't have the same range of equipment as we have, but the basic equipment they have: oxygen, wheelchairs, breast pumps, nebulizers.
Okay. Yeah, so Janet, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about how you use your professional life to help people with equipment, and if you could share like a specific story that might be pretty interesting for our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I'm in charge of a display system, and we have all of the, we have wheelchairs, and we have a kitchen set up, and we have a bed set up, and we have a toilet set up, and we have all of the different ambulatory devices. And so one person came in, and her parents just moved in. They're Americans, and her father was having very severe cognitive deficits. And so I went through the house and I suggested what they could do. And the father was decrepit and not walking around. And so I told her from the kitchen to the bedroom, the toilet, and I explained her how would she do the ambulatory devices, and it was wonderful. And it took a long time, over an hour, and it was very, very grateful. And she was very grateful, and she thanked me for everything.
Terrific. Pam, would you like to share with us a little bit about?
1 second, I just want to add something that Janet didn't say about herself. Sorry for interrupting, but Janet also uses her experience to help the volunteers. In other words, she instructs us on how to use the equipment and how to explain to the people coming in to use the equipment, which is, she has a lot more experience than most of us. So that's great.
That is great. That's terrific.
And we have on our staff, as well as Janet, who's a physiotherapist, and Sharon, who's an occupational therapist. We also have another physiotherapist, Melanie, and we do take advantage of their experience, and try and learn from them when people come in.
Many volunteers call me up on their shift and they'll ask questions.
Okay, that's terrific. That really shows that you really are comfortable and they're comfortable working with you, which really helps the clients. So that's really wonderful when everyone works together. We're really lucky to have people like you helping. So I was going to ask Susan if she could tell me a little bit about some of the equipment she particularly likes to give out and what she uses, and if there's anything special she likes.
Well, I think I'd be really happy if I didn't have to give out any of the equipment, that people would need it. But mainly the most interesting thing is that we've learned how to use the equipment properly. Like what Rebecca was saying is that, through Janet, through Melanie, we've learned how, when you give someone a pair of crutches, you don't just stick them under their arms and tell them to start walking. You have to know how to use them properly, because if you don't, you can fall. And we've seen people fall that have been trying just to test them out in the branch before they even take them home. So Janet made me realize actually how important that is, or even how to get in a wheelchair and out of a wheelchair. That I happen to know because of working in a hospital, but not everybody knows how to do that. So, I'm happy when I can make sure that someone's going to be safe using the equipment, not just to take it and say, bye, I'm going now. So I think we all try and do that to try and explain to them minimally, because we're not physiotherapists or occupational therapists, but we try and explain to them as best as we can how to use the equipment properly. Even like an oxygen tank, people think you just like plug it in or something, I don't know, turn it on and it works, but that's not the way it works. If you don't do it properly, the oxygen's gone in a few minutes, so that when you know that you've gotten through to a client and been able to explain to them exactly how to use the equipment, that it's a good feeling. But actually I wanted to point out another point is that very often, unfortunately, we get people that have to be in a wheelchair or use a commode chair like permanently, like they're not getting out of it. And we try and help them to make sure that they get to the resources so that they can get equipment. Not that we want to take away from Yad Sarah, but we want them to be able to have the equipment and not have to pay for it forever type of thing, or rent it forever. So we try and point them in the direction how they can get from social services or from their healthcare provider, how they can get assistance in their home, or like what Janet said, even to go and get an assessment. We've had lots of times where people have come and they say, tell me what I need to get. Well, I don't know what they need to get. They need someone to assess them in their home. And the health funds provide that service, but very often people don't know that. So we kind of give them some general information as well to point them in the right direction.
Playing a little bit of social worker at the same time. So that's really, really wonderful. Yeah. Sharon, tell us a little bit about some of the equipment you particularly have had fun experiences, meaning like a very happy outcome.
Well, I enjoy when problem solving with whoever comes in. They may want a wheelchair because they're after a hip surgery. And then I'll say, well, maybe you also need a raised toilet seat. Maybe you need grab bars. Is the house safe? Is the doors wide enough? I get them thinking a little bit beyond of what they just came in for. So I do enjoy, I also calm them down, let them know we're here for them. And point them, do you need a sock aid now? Being an OT, you can't bend over and reach your foot anymore now. And they're like amazed that we have such equipment. They, most have never had experience with these things before, whether it's a grab bar or one of those a long handle reacher to pick things up from the floor. And they really appreciate it. And I love sharing my professional knowledge from all those years that I worked mostly with older people. So I feel very comfortable with teaching them how to use the equipment and helping, ease their minds a bit so that they are able to help their loved ones.
That's great. So Pam, I was going to ask you, how did you find out about Yad Sarah? How did you get started? What was your impetus?
So I forgot, my Sunday opened up a few years ago, and I was speaking to a mutual friend, Tanya Reinfeld of Rebecca's and mine. And I said, I'm really looking to do some stucco work, some charity work. Do you know? And she goes, yes, I do. I was just talking to Rebecca, and it was a perfect fit. It was a way to give back to the community, a way to reach out to more of Beit Shemesh than the little bubble we all live in, little neighborhoods. So, but I wanted to add, if I can add, this is actually, I have a good story I prepared also, where a few weeks ago on the news, there was on the Beit Shemesh news locally, a couple that forgot their child in the car. Now, this is happening all over Israel. It's heartbreaking, thank God. A very well-intentioned neighbor saw it, opened the car, got the child out. Happy ending. No. During my shift on Sunday morning, I get this young couple in. They're all emotional. They said, can you sell us the device? It's called a Taf Saf. What's the translation, Rebecca? And it's a reminder to put in your car. And it beeps when it's attached to the child. If you forget the child, it starts beeping. And it was the couple from the news that came to Yad Sarah and said, I never thought it could happen to us. The father was all emotional, and I said, it's fine, it's fine. And look, now you're here, you're taking care of it. But to actually see like the direct translation of what we do to help, even reaching out to like a new product, people in their house should have a 24/7 emergency line, or babies shouldn't be forgotten in the cars. I mean, Yad Sarah is coming up with things all the time. It's really amazing. And
it really is special.
Yeah, and you always get a bracha. You always get a blessing at the end. Anyone who comes to bar, like Janet or Susan or Sharon, everyone goes, and you should be well. You're doing great. It's lovely to get a blessing. you know, every day there's some sort of blessing you get from someone. And I think that's also very special.
Right, they're a real paying it forward, which is really,
Yeah.
really lovely. So I know that Beit Shemesh is a very diverse community. Janet, can you tell me about some of the, diverse people that have come into the office to get things?
We have Russians and French people and nuns from a convent and Arabs, and it's all languages. So
And you have people speaking Arabic and French and Russian.
well, we have a Russian volunteer on our shift. I speak Arabic and Sharon speaks Yiddish, and the other volunteer speaks French, and we obviously speak English and Hebrew. So all the languages are covered. Oh,
Okay.
and we have Ethiopians, and I don't think anybody speaks Amharic. But usually the Ethiopians speak Hebrew, so.
Right.
And we have very, very variety of people, so it's wonderful, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it really shows that we're all one small world, so that's really pretty special. So Susan, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you found Beit Yad Sarah, and how long have you been volunteering there?
Well, first of all, I've been volunteering about 3.5 years.
Mhm.
Rebecca and I are friends. We've known each other for about 20 years at least, maybe more. But I actually came to Yad Sarah through my son. When my son was a teenager, one summer I said to him, "You're not sitting at home. You have to go volunteer somewhere and give back to the community." So I said, "Call Rebecca, maybe she needs you." So he did. And he went once a week for many years. And he used to come home and tell stories and everything. And I said, "You know what? When I retire, I'm going to go volunteer there too." And that's what I did. So I've been there for about 3.5 years, I guess, maybe a little bit more. And I had told Rebecca that when I do retire, I'm going to come and volunteer. So.
Right. So we actually have one question that came up that I think would be wonderful to address at this point in the conversation. Someone wrote, I'm a wheelchair user. My husband and I will be making Aliyah to Israel shortly, and we'll be residing in Beit Shemesh, Aleph, in the Harmony building for people 55 to 60 years and older. I am most concerned about transportation, especially intercity transportation in Israel. Can you please tell me about Yad Sarah's transportation services in Beit Shemesh and all availability day to day for the intercity travel? By the way, the Shoshana Shapiro is actually somebody I know from Brooklyn from before I made Aliyah. And, so it's, all worlds coming together. And I don't know if Rebecca or someone else would like to take that question, but that's a really good question.
Okay, so it actually happens that about a month ago, another couple just made Aliyah to Beit Shemesh. And through Adele, she contacted me by WhatsApp before she came on Aliyah. For about 2 or 3 months. We communicated back and forth because her husband was wheelchair bound and needed oxygen, and he needed various equipment. We can provide whatever you want, specifically transportation. We do have transportation services for people who are wheelchair bound. It's run through it's organized from Jerusalem. The office that organizes it in Jerusalem, and you basically have to phone in and book a ride with them. It's like a taxi, basically. It's cheaper than if you were to take a private taxi, but it's like a taxi service. It's a private car. It's a van that's been renovated to accommodate wheelchairs. You're welcome to give if you know them personally, to give them my phone number, and they can speak to me afterwards specifically, and I can give them all the details.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a large?
Can I just add something? I just want
Please.
to add that my colleagues are being very modest, because I know many, many times we get calls where someone says, "I can't come in. It's really hard for me." And I know and all of us, I think, have gone out of our way, or if they live in our neighborhood, if it's a walker or crutches, we'll bring it. We'll say, where do you live? One of us lives near you. You're in our neighborhood, and give us your credit card number. We'll take care of it. And I think that's another way we help people who do have difficulty physically getting into the office. So
That's great. And how often do people request ride services?
I don't know specifically. I know the services run in all the 5 main areas of Yad Sarah. I know there's definitely the service runs in Jerusalem, in the center, in the Beersheba area, in the Haifa area. Specifically through Beit Shemesh, people once in a while, people will ask us and we'll refer them, we'll give them the contact details in Jerusalem. But I know that definitely there is at least one bus, minivan that services the Beit Shemesh area.
Okay. So you keep referring to the Jerusalem hub, so to speak. Are there a lot, do you have as much equipment or all the same equipment as Jerusalem? Or do you sometimes, other than the oxygen that you ran low on, are there sometimes pieces of equipment you don't have in Beit Shemesh that you need to acquire elsewhere? And if so, how do you do that?
So we carry the general equipment, the equipment that is mostly needed or wanted. The main branch, which is the Yad Sarah house in Jerusalem, carries other equipment that's generally much more expensive equipment. There's two things. There's either the very expensive equipment, and then they lend it out from the Jerusalem.
What would that be? What would be the very expensive equipment?
Hospital beds, hoists, chairs, a chair to allow you to go up and down stairs, a CPM, which is a piece of physiotherapy equipment for the knee. Someone who's has a problem with their knee. Janet would be able to explain that better than me, but it helps you do the physiotherapy. And there are a few other pieces that are more expensive, and they can only borrow them through the main branch in Jerusalem. And on the other side of the picture are pieces of equipment that are not the general run-of-the-mill equipment, but it's people who have bought things to use, and they've used it temporarily and then didn't need it, and then donated to Yad Sarah. But Yad Sarah hasn't gone out and bought it in bulk, and therefore they only have two or three pieces of that item. Therefore they keep it as a collection in the main branch in Jerusalem, and you can phone in and say, do you have such and such? And if
Can you give an example of a such and such?
Say that again?
Can you give an example of one of these?
I have an example, if you don't mind, because you helped me, Rebecca, with this.
Oh, right.
My cousin needed a portable breathing machine. There are very few of them, right? You remember my cousin from Haifa?
Right.
And there was one donated by someone else from New York, and we found out about it, and you helped obtain the portable machine. It's the Hamsan machine, but it's tiny. Machine. Yes, and it's on a battery pack, and there are very few of those, but we were able to get that.
We're able to get that. And does the client need to go to Jerusalem to pick it up, or like with the oxygen, will they bring it to your Beit Shemesh office?
Generally, those items, they have to go and get it in Jerusalem.
Right.
Often I say to them, if you phone them up and you do it over the phone, they're prepared to send it with someone, then sometimes, as I said, our area coordinator who lives in Ramat Beit Shemesh will bring it. But generally, they prefer people to come in and pick it up by themselves. The other thing that we also get from Jerusalem, in Jerusalem, they have a medicine gemach, a collection of, if people have medicines that they don't need anymore, they can send them in. And because Jerusalem has a emergency, like an emergency room, like you would have in the hospital, an emergency room, there is one in the Yad Sarah house as well. And therefore they have pharmacists that volunteer with them. So they have a collection. When people have medicine left and they don't need it, they donate it, and then they have the pharmacists who check them. They check that they haven't gone past their expiry date. And sometimes people will send in, they need to have, of course, a prescription, but it means they don't have to spend money. Elderly people often have, they're very limited funds, and therefore if they can get their medicine this way, it's very easy. So for them, it's better for them, and therefore they'll send packages to us, and we know when the packages turn up, we call the client, we say your medicine's arrived, and they come and pick it up. We're just the drop-off point from that point of view.
Okay, that's great. So I got another interesting question here that I think is important for you to answer is that if people in America have equipment left over from parents or an illness that they, please God, actually got over, how would they get it to you from America?
That would be a question for Adele.
That would be, okay, so we will.
Unless they have someone coming, if they had a friend or a neighbor who's coming to Israel who would be willing to bring it for them, that would be one way. And maybe the best answer is they would have to contact Adele or Adele's office and see how they could do that.
Okay, great. But this does bring up a question that I think I would have, and I'm wondering if many of your clients would have, is so how do you clean the equipment between clients? Is there a special staff member, a special room? Like, how do you keep equipment? I know that I have a friend here in Jerusalem who works on fixing equipment in their big giant room in Jerusalem. What do you do? Do you have a room like that in Beit Shemesh, or do you just have a cleaning room? Like, how do you do this? How do you keep your equipment in good order?
Susan, that one's for you.
Who's that for?
Susan, take yourself off mute.
Take it away.
That's why I told you that because I'm a medical technologist, it's like using my hands is in my heart. So we are very lucky to have one particular person, Yaron, who is fantastic. I told Rebecca if he ever stops volunteering, I really don't know what we'll do. But there's also some other there are men that volunteer that are very good with their hands. The first of all is that some of the branches that don't have somebody that can fix things, they have to send it back to Jerusalem, whatever. But he manages to fix a lot of problems. Let's say like a wheel isn't screwed in properly, or I don't know, all kinds of things. Even like simple things that he's taught us to do, like somebody has a cane, and the rubber on the bottom is worn out. Well, you can slip and it can be really dangerous. And like, he's taught us all how to switch them. The person buys a new rubber end for it, or for a walker, and they switches it. So that's one thing that we're very lucky that he fixes. Well, I shouldn't say they fix a lot of the equipment. With regards to cleaning it, I can't tell you exactly what the solution that we use is, but it's a solution that's sent to us from Yad Sarah in Jerusalem, that we spray and clean every piece of equipment before it goes back into circulation. And especially with COVID, we're like even extra special careful now, because you don't know where a piece of equipment came from, and nobody's going to want to take it into us. But we always try and spruce things up, as not just to clean it like to antiseptically, but also to clean it up so that it looks nice. That people will want to take the equipment into their homes.
Okay, great. So I'd like to.
Rita, can I just add another thing? I remember something when you were talking about from people coming from abroad. I have a very good friend of mine, Arlene Weisbart, who's the Yad Sarah representative in Toronto. And we talk Yad Sarah all the time between us. She's one of the reasons I also came to volunteer, because she drove me crazy that she raises money. But she told me what happens with, she's like Adele's counterpart in Toronto. And she told me that very often when people are going to Israel, they will approach her and she'll help set up all kinds of things for them, like somebody that needs wheelchair or assistance or whatever in a hotel even. And she'll try and set it up from her end. So I thought that's really important to know, even for us to know that they can arrange that before the people come to Israel.
They have a tourism department in Yad Sarah, and anybody comes from overseas can order the equipment that they need, or a wheelchair or a walker, and they'll bring it to the hotel or the airport. It's amazing.
That is amazing. Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. So what I'd like to do is go around the room and ask you to tell us something you think everyone on this Zoom should hear that's you think makes Yad Sarah the most special place. And you know, obviously these wonderful Zoominars, as I'm calling them these days, are to help us learn about the special people who work at Yad Sarah, but it's also a way for Yad Sarah to get the needed funds that they need to continue running these amazing places. So I would love if you could just tell us something really, really special about what makes Yad Sarah very special to you and why you think people should be drawn to it. That will really make us feel moved for the evening. And let's just go in order. Rebecca, why don't you go first?
Oh, the main reason is that Yad Sarah helps everyone. It doesn't matter who you are and where you come from. From the whole diverse population of Israel, from the Haredim to the national religious to the non-religious to the Arabs. There are Yad Sarah branches all around the country in all different communities. And we help everyone, and we don't check anyone's financial backgrounds. Everyone can borrow equipment at no cost to themselves. They leave a deposit, which is fully returnable when they return the equipment, and no one asks any questions. We're here to help, and that's really the thing that I find most amazing about Yad Sarah.
Okay, Pam. You have to unmute yourself.
I also think Yad Sarah, everything Rebecca said, this is what's going to be, fills the need. Where would people be able to obtain this equipment if Yad Sarah did not exist? And it's the most phenomenal organization. It has tons of branches, mostly, I don't know what percent Rebecca's volunteer, but mostly run by volunteers. And it's just incredible to see the heart of the organization, what they're providing, no questions asked. And the people that work there also are incredibly special. They give above and beyond. Everyone here is so modest, but I know that sometimes I have to run out on time, and Susan will stay later, Rebecca will stay later, just to help the person because they came after closing. There are a lot of beautiful, beautiful golden hearts at Yad Sarah. It's a very special organization.
Sounds like you're a family. Susan, do you have anything you could add to that? Susan, is there anything you want to add?
You're on mute.
You're on.
Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, you know, the main thing is that it's like kind of like an easy mitzvah. It's like you go and you know that you're going to help somebody. You may not have 25 people coming in. You may only have one or two. Sometimes that happens also, but you know that you're inevitably helping somebody, and it's really a wonderful feeling. And what everybody else said also, but you know, it's like that's the main reason. You know, you could go to a library and volunteer, and many people do, and just give a book, but here you're helping someone to make their life a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's the best. And Sharon?
It's hard to add on to all that. I just have to agree with everybody. It's Yad Sarah is an amazing organization. It never says no to anybody. If they can't provide something, they'll tell you where you can get it or how you can get it. So you never walk out feeling like I didn't help somebody today. It's a, you know, even for us, it's the most gratifying feeling to be able to help people. And even though we're retired, we're still working for Yad Sarah. We feel very important in what we do. It's a gratifying feeling knowing that we really help people.
That's great. And so Janet, you could finish up with the
Oh, the
sketch.
Yad Sarah does many more things than distributing the equipment. They have dentists that go into the home, and they have wills made up for the senior citizens, and they have rehab centers in many different places of the country, and they have they sell handicrafts made in the centers, and there's amazing, and they also have an educational, if you have a question about a disease, then you can get advice about the disease, and it's amazing. And
So you have doctors on call to help people with those questions.
yes, yes.
Amazing. So you have doctors, pharmacists, PTs, OTs. You really have the whole breadth of healthcare behind you, which is really wonderful and really very, very special. So I have to tell you, this was for me a very fascinating evening myself to get to know you. You're really a very special group. And like I said, I think you're like a family of little angels helping in a very, very special city. So I really appreciate your sharing with us all your stories and information. And I hope that people who are listening get to really see how special Yad Sarah is in general, and particularly in our little sunny city of Beit Shemesh. I would like to announce that Yad Sarah is going to have a webinar on December 19th about making Aliyah with disabilities. And I'm going to paste that into the chat for those who are interested, so that hopefully those who are interested, they could also, of course, call the Yad Sarah office, and I'm sure someone will in New York or LA or Toronto, wherever they are, and I'm sure someone could help them to find out a little bit more about this program and more about making Aliyah with disabilities. Are there any last questions from the audience? I promise questions at the end. Wow, I guess we did a really good job. There are no questions. Okay. Well, I thank everyone for their attention and their time this evening, wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and to good health.
Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Rada, will you pass on the information of the person who is asking questions about transport?
Yes.
Just
Actually,
send
when
that
I
to
went
me
to
and let
school,
me
her
after.
name is she goes by Shoshana, and I knew her as Sharon last. And she wrote to me directly but she did not give me her email. I know someone who has that email. I know someone who knows her and has that email, because she didn't give me